Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Dean Rogers Show. Today, we have Mr. David Olds. What's up, David?
How are you, my man? I'm so happy to be here. I know we've talked about this for a long time. We had some scheduling conflicts and conundrums, but no, man, I'm glad we got to get together.
Yeah, we just keep flirting with each other, man, and now it's finally we're here.
That's right. You still haven't given me we didn't have the armband challenge thing, but
Yeah,
yeah.
we did it in person though, right? Didn't we?
No, we didn't do them. You were going to bring them over.
Oh,
I think you got sidetracked with somebody else.
oh man.
It
Next
was a
time we
bit
see
better
each
that way. I
other.
didn't have to be embarrassed. So,
No, you're gonna hit the bands next time.
all right, let's do
Um,
it.
yeah, we'll get you a nasty pump. So,
Yeah.
all right, guys. For those of you that don't know, Mr. David Olds here. He has been investing for 21 years. He's done over 1,500 wholesale deals.
Yeah.
He flips houses. He's got over 100 rentals, and now he's disrupting the transaction coordination side of the business and has a full service business on that side. So we'll be sure to talk about that as well. You guys can always connect with him at David Olds REI on Instagram. Find him on all the socials. So, dude, let's dive in here.
Yeah, man, let's do it. 21 years. That sounds stupid even to me. It's like, I think that sounds like somebody who was just too dumb to quit. I think it really is what the answer is, right? I'm the guy at the party who stayed too long, I guess. I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
20 years.
Hey, that means you found something that you like and you're working on. So,
Well, it beats the heck out of a corporate job, right? That's for sure, right? We're not out here digging ditches or doing anything like that. We're our job as investors, we're here, helping people, helping sellers, and helping buyers, and putting deals together. It's what's not to love.
that's right. Well, I'd love to kind of go back and talk about when you were getting started and kind of like how you got there, because I don't know your story just yet about how you did get started.
Yeah. So, I don't feel like I have like this tragic story or, some people you've had Eric Klein on, I'm sure, right? Have you, Eric Klein? No. Oh, you should. Yeah.
I'm wondering if I
I
have.
had to follow him speaking at an event, and, it was, he's like, 14 years ago, I was 3 blocks away doing crack. And now I'm like, having to follow that was horrendous. Right. So I don't have that kind of story, but no, man, I grew up in Boston, had a great kind of just middle class family. My dad was ex-Army. So, our lives were really revolved around chores and responsibilities and all of that type of stuff. So, my dad growing up was always, fixing the house. We were building additions. We were doing all that stuff. So like I was a kid that had to come home every day and do an hour and a half of chores in the yard, no matter what the weather was. And on the weekends, it was like 4 hours, which, at the time just seemed like the end of the world to a 13-year-old.
Right.
But yeah, so, funny because I got so tired of, we lived in Boston. So the one thing we do in the fall is we do nothing but rake leaves. And so as a kid, I was always like, when I grow up, I'm never going to make my kids do this. I'm going to live in a condo, and, I won't make them do any of the things that my parents are making me do. And it turns out, what happens is you become exactly like your parents. So, my wife and we got married in 2002. And the first thing we did was we went out and bought a house and tore it apart and started remodeling it, which, because that's sort of the background I came from. Plus, I also worked for a building materials company in Florida. So anyways, that was cool. We got this little house in Apopka, Florida. We, went in and just did some, changed out some flooring, some doors, just stuff like that. But we resold it 2 years later, and we made almost $50,000 in 2002. Like that was pretty good. So I remember going to the closing with our agent, our realtor, and she's like, "Hey, you don't have to pay tax on this money." I'm like, "Well, why?" She's like, "Well, because you lived in it for 2 years and it's homesteaded, dummy." I'm like, "Oh, well, that's interesting." So we walked away with, literally all the money, tax free in our pockets. So I'm like, "Well, this is cool. Let's do it again." So we went and we bought like the ugliest house in a really nice neighborhood. This all brick, brick kind of not ranchers, but brick homes with pools and oak trees. We bought the ugliest one. We did the same thing. We fixed that up, and about 30 months later, we sold it, made almost 100,000. I'm like, okay, we need to figure this out, right? We need to kind of get this a little bit more dialed in. And I happened to be at the Orlando airport, and I was waiting on our kids to fly in. And most cliche thing ever, right? I'm in the bookstore, literally leaning on the shelf, just trying to kill time, pick up a book. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? Like, again, but like the story that 99% of investors all have. So I read that book, and it's very simple, easy read. If anybody hasn't read it, you should go buy it today. And at the end of the book, Kiyosaki says, "Hey, if you want to be in oil, do this. If you want to be in stocks, you should do this. If you want to learn about real estate, you should find a real estate investment association or like a real estate meetup." I'm like, okay, I've never claimed to be the smartest guy, but I can definitely follow direction, right? I'm coachable. So I go to my big computer, this big monitor from 2002 or what, three or whatever it was back then, and like
It was
web crawl.
100 pounds, right?
Oh yeah, dude, it was big. Right? Like Google didn't even exist, so it was I think it was like web crawler or something. And I'm like, Orlando Real Estate Association, and I found this one called the Central Florida Real Estate CFRI, Real Estate Investors Association, right? So I'm looking at it online. I'm like, yeah, this sounds like what I want. So I told my wife, I'm like, I'm going to go down there. And it was July. They had a meeting at the first Wednesday of every month at the old Bumby Theater in downtown Orlando, if anybody's from there. And so I'm like, okay, I'm all excited. I'm going to drive down there. We live like 30 minutes north. And so I'm driving down. I'm all excited. And like, I'm actually a super introvert. Like, I'm super, super introverted and shy. And so, anyways, I pull into this parking lot, and little did I know, CFRI is the third biggest REIA in the country. It's enormous. There's like hundreds of cars out front. And so I pull in this parking lot, and like all these cars, this back in the day, everybody had decals and magnets. And it's like, I buy houses, hard money, soft money, 1041 exchange, Inspectigator, like all these cars.
Soft
And
money.
yeah. So yeah. Well, that was it. And they're hard to get money. We're easy. Anyways. So I'm driving through this parking lot looking for a parking place, and I'm just getting more and more anxious the whole time.
Yeah.
And all I can think of is, holy I do not belong here. Like, I should not be here. When in reality, I flipped two houses, which is probably more than half the people in the room there had done. But I'm like, I can't do this. And I'm looking for a spot right out the other side. So I drive home, and I
You
can
drove
count on
home?
left, dude,
Oh
left.
no.
Dude, I was too afraid to go in.
Yeah.
Crazy. Like, and I can count on like one hand the number of times I've not told my wife the truth. So I get home, and she's like, how'd it go? I'm like, couldn't find it. Couldn't find it. I'll go back next month. And I was so mad with myself. I remember it was July, because I remember there was a month I didn't go, but then the next month I went. It was like the day before my birthday, so it was September. And so now I'm pissed though. Now I'm like so mad with myself because it's been 60 days, and I made this commitment. I was going to go do this thing. So I'm like, yep, I'm driving down there like white knuckled, like fingernails are digging into my palm. I'm like, I'm doing this the whole way, 30 minutes. I'm like, I'm going in. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. I'm doing this. So I pull in, I whip into like the first parking spot, get out of my car real fast, walk up there and pay. I paid the $20 or whatever it was to get in. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And it wasn't like I've never like done things. Like, I was a manager of big stores and had employees, but something about this, I was just so nervous because it was so new. Right. And I know a lot of people have that feeling, right? The first time they want to start something that's new like this. So I go in, and it has a little lobby, right? You've seen them, like everybody's got a table set up and they're giving crap away. So I'm like, I'm just doing what everybody else does. So I grab a bag, and I'm just getting pencils and pens and notepads, and just trying to blend in. And so the meeting starts. They call everybody in. Huge auditorium, right? So I go sit way in the back left-hand corner where nobody will bother me. I take out my notepad, and I'm ready to start taking notes, like Kiyosaki said, right? And they did this really interesting thing there that I love to tell the story. They called it Deal of the Month. So every month they would pre-select 3, 4, 5 people, and they would get up and they would talk about a deal they've done, and then they would flap, pick the winner, get like $100 Home Depot card. So cool. So this first guy gets up, and this is old like transparencies. This is how long ago this was. Like, they're putting the transparency down, it's shooting up on the board. Yeah. So first guy gets up, and I wish I could remember his name, but I always say Bob. So Bob's like this typical Florida guy, 80 years old, 80 pounds, literally like overalls, a white t-shirt and straw like that. Like this was the guy. He gets up and he's like, hi, my name is Bob. So I'm like, Bob, taking notes, Bob. Okay, because I don't know what's happening, right? First time. And so everybody yells, hey, Bob. And I'm like, my God, where am I at? And so anyways, he starts telling the story about, he's like, I was on my way to North Carolina to see my kinfolk. Like, okay, kinfolk, got it, taking notes. And he's like, so I stopped in South Carolina for some gas, and I don't even want to do the guy's accent, but he's basically, he stopped and there was this for sale by owner sign. So he stopped and he went and talked to the guy, and the guy wanted like $80,000 or something. And Bob's like, well, I offered him like 42 because I remember it was like half. I'm like, man, dude, you got big balls, half. And he's like, well, the guy didn't take it. So I went to visit with my kinfolk. And as I was driving home, the guy called him back and said, okay, I'll take your offer. I was like, wow. Okay. So he says, I went back, I stayed there for a couple of days, closed on the house, hired a contractor. And then I came back to Florida. And he's like, I just sold the house and made $60,000. And I'm looking at this guy on stage who, looks like he's homeless, talks like he's got marbles in his mouth. And I'm like, that guy just made $60,000 and he didn't even do anything. And 60 is a lot of money, remember, back then. So I'm like, holy smokes. Okay, we're taking my notes, $60,000. So the next girl gets up. Dude, this girl, her name is Olga. She's from Russia. Stunningly beautiful. She starts talking. You can't even understand what she's saying because she's got such a thick accent. But she's talking about how she's flipping mobile homes all over Orlando for $5,000 a piece. I don't even know what the next two people said because I was just sitting there stunned that dude who has marbles in his mouth, hot chick who doesn't speak English, and these two people are making money hand over fist. What am I doing? Like, why am I not doing this? Right. And that's kind of one of those stories that I go back to all the time in my life. Like if they can do this, certainly I can. Right. I am definitely that smart. Right. I'm at least as smart as that. I have a degree from UMass. Like I'm at least as smart as them. I'm not going to let fear of just the unknown hold me back. So that was sort of my first meeting, and how I got into real estate. And that first meeting was really pivotal for me because I got to see that people who aren't that smart can make a lot of money, like a lot of money. And just kind of one of those points in your life that you can always go back and reflect on.
Yeah, that's a huge mental breakthrough. And I think the part I love most about the story is you driving by and not going to that first meetup,
Yeah.
because the reality about that, why it's good for you to share that, given what you've accomplished and where you're at today, is that a lot of people are too scared to make that first step.
Oh, it's horrifyingly scary.
There's all these limiting beliefs that you have. There's all these
Yeah.
self-doubts that you have. You have all this pre-programming about how you're not good enough, you're not going to make it. That's what
Yeah.
the rich people do. But
Yeah.
you saw and had that mental breakthrough when you saw these guys doing
Yeah.
it, and if they could do it, you could definitely do it, right? And
100%.
I think that's why I love real estate so much, is because doesn't matter what you look like, how tall you are, how short you are, what color your skin is, what age you are, what language you speak. It does not matter if you're willing to take the time and effort to
Yeah.
learn the foundational skills and then put the effort and back it up
Yeah.
with your with taking action,
Yeah.
then anybody can do it.
Yeah, 100%. It's, I say it's the great equalizer, right? It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, where you come from, everybody can 100% get rich in real estate. In fact, most of the people that we know that are wealthy in real estate started with nothing,
Yeah.
with absolutely nothing. So no, big believer in it. It's if you want to work hard and have the least little bit of discipline, like you can do this. Getting rich it's not complicated. It's not exciting. Right? It's really not. It's being able to do the same thing that works repetitively over,
That's it,
and
man.
over, making the call, sending the messages, sending the direct mail, going out on the meetings. learning the most basic of people skills. And, and you can make money. Now, if you start to excel at any of those areas, my goodness, then you're off to the races.
Yeah. That's another nugget right there, man, is there is no secret sauce.
No secret.
There's little things that can help you and accelerate it, like you said,
Yeah.
but the real secret is just being willing and able to do it over and over and over again. Because I think another area where people will get caught up when they're getting started is they'll take the action. They might even get some results. They might even get a deal or two, but then they stop doing those things that they were doing to get those deals and the
Yeah.
effort that they were putting in there, and then they're just wondering why it's not still working. So,
Yeah.
for you, what was it that took you from doing those two deals yourself, right? That you just kind of happened to flip your own houses
Yeah.
to go into the meetup. What were the next steps you took to really just put the rocket fuel on?
So for me, now, like I had a great job. I had a good corporate job. I was back then probably making 80 or 85,000. My wife had a good job, 60 or 70. So we were in Central Florida, like we were good. Like, we definitely were making money. And then so the one thing I did is that RIA was really amazing. They had a meeting, 4 nights a week, someplace in Central Florida. So I got very involved in that. They would do weekend seminars. They would bring in guest speakers. There were local groups for landlords, for accounting, for wholesaling. Like there was a group for everything there. So I just immersed myself as much as I could in that world. And that's one thing about entrepreneurs, we get a little obsessive about stuff. And when we're in it, we want to be all in it. So yeah, I just dove in and tried to learn as much as I possibly could, while still staying focused. And my focus at that time was buying, rehabbing, and reselling, right? That because I had a job, so I needed something that I could do nights and weekends. But yeah, for sure, the biggest catalyst was getting involved in the education that I could, belonging to the group, attending as much as I could, and just being around people who were actually doing the business. Because then you can see, oh, this is a real thing. Right. This isn't just something that I read on a book, or this, ex-football player. No wonder he's doing so great. Right.
Course,
Like,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Or something. Or me, they look at me like, oh, you've done 1,500 deals. Of course you can jump on the phone with somebody. But, when you see people every day, out there, winning and sometimes losing, but they're in the game, and that it actually works, it just strengthens your belief system. And I paid for coaching. I paid for mentoring and coaching, and, a big believer in that. I think, I've spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in, mentorships and masterminds and all those types of things. But you learn so much and make such great connections. So we continued to do that until like 2008, 2009, because then it was the end of the world, right? Then it was the great recession or depression or crash or whatever you wanted it to be. And so by this time, we'd done maybe 15 houses. And we knew something was happening. We knew the market was slowing down. We could tell from our business. I worked for like 84 Lumber. We were a building material supplier. So we knew that the market was slowing down really fast. You couldn't tell, like you didn't know we were about to fall off a cliff, but you knew it was a little bit of a slowdown. So we wanted to, my wife and I realized we need to be investing someplace else, because Florida's just, it kind of got too out of control, and now it's so competitive, and it was a difficult environment to be an investor. So we started looking around, and we found Chattanooga. Chattanooga, had relatively low, hadn't had much of a fall off in pricing. It was poised for a ton of growth. Volkswagen had just announced that they were going to open their first production facility in the United States here. It was the first city in the country to have gigabyte internet to every house. It was called Gig City. Let's see, Volkswagen, Amazon opened 2 fulfillment plants here, almost back to back. So it was a city that was really on the rise. So we bought our last house in Deltona, Florida. And Dean, I bought this house. It was a probate deal. I'm like, we're going to do one more deal, and then we're gonna bounce out of here. So I bought this deal, little 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, 742 Trafalgar Street in Deltona. And Identical house, one block over, two blocks down, had just sold for 214. So, dude, I'm at 97. Like, I'm good. This is in October of '08. So I'm like, so like it had slowed down, but like that's all it had done. So I'm like, okay, we're going to take one more bite at the apple and we're going to take our 50, 60 grand and we're going to skedaddle out of here. So back in those days, I was younger, skinnier, and had a lot more energy. So I did all the rehabbing, scraping ceilings, putting down tile, doing all that stuff. So I finished my house in like October, late October, called my realtor and she's like, yeah, let's list it in January because we don't want to list it during the holidays. Nobody's going to buy. You're just going to get a bunch of days on market. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So January comes around. I call her. I'm like, hey, Shayna, come on over. Let's get this thing sold. And so she comes over and she's like, it looks great. I'm like, I know. She's like, you did a good job. I'm like, I know. What can we sell it for? So she, this again, 2008 or 9, no iPads, no computers, right? She pulls out this notebook with like all these pages from MLS. She's like, well, I think somewhere around 154. Shana, one block over, two block, 214. Oh, yeah, that was last year. We had gone over the cliff at this point, probably sometime in September or October. And what had happened was, for all the 3 years before, where everybody had been running around talking about pre-foreclosures and how to market to pre-foreclosures, well, guess what had happened? All of them hit the market all at once in late fall of 2008. That was the beginning of the crash. And, for a lot of people who didn't live through that, and it just used to hear people talk about it, like Google Dan Rather, like coming on the news at night saying, we're not sure if the economy will open in the morning. Like it was scary shit. I'm just telling you, it was a bad time. So I'm like, well, I sounded like every new investor ever. My house is better than those houses. Just the stupidest thing ever. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to sell for that. That's stupid. Those are foreclosures. My house is remodeled. And she's like, yeah, I don't think it's going to matter. Like it's bad. I'm like, well, this is my ticket out, right? Like this was, even though we were making good money and flipping houses, like we were spending money, we were going on vacation. We weren't banking all of that money. So I'm like, well, here's what I'll do. And I thought I was the most magnanimous SOB ever. I'll do it for 165. And she's like, okay, sign here. She's a listing agent. She doesn't care. Walks out, sign in the yard, out she goes. So I'm on the market in January of 2009 at, dude, like a big discount, right? And like a 25% discount. Not one call, nothing. Not even a click. So I call her in February. I'm like, hey, what should we do? She's like, I don't know. You really need to probably lower it. I'm like, if I go to 155, will that get it done? She's like, no. I'm like, what do you mean? You told me 154. She's like, you probably need to be at like 148, 147. I'm like, I'm not doing that because I'm so smart. All right, we'll go to 155. Like a couple of clicks, but not even a showing, like nothing. So finally March, I'm like, oh my God, what do I got to do? I got to sell this thing. Cause now I've told my boss, like I'm leaving, like I'm out.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, just do the 145. I'm like, if I can clear 30 grand and get out of here, it'll be great. Because we've already started like, my brother was going to move to Chattanooga with us. So he's already up here and we were, trying to start wholesaling. So I'm like, I got to get going. I'm like, put it at 145. I'm like, will that do it? I don't know. I'm like, you're kidding me. Like, what is the number? She's like, honestly, probably 125.
No.
I'm like, I cannot sell this thing. I have over 20 grand in it in my labor. I'm like, I can't do that. I'm like, put it at 145. So finally a month, we had some showings, still like no offers. Like, this is how bad it was. So, when people were saying like last year, we're in a recession, we were not in a freaking recession. It drives me crazy. Being in a recession is like, picture the fat kid chasing a tennis ball down a hill. You can't catch the price that's falling so fast. That's a recession, right? Like, that's not what we were in. We had this little dip. I get it. Some of your area, maybe coastal areas, you had a little more contraction, but most of America did not see that. Not like we were seeing in Central Florida back then. It was terrible.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. I wanted to take a moment to tell you about my coaching program and the community. Besides teaching you exactly what we're doing in our multiple 7-figure real estate investing business, we also have several group coaching calls a week, and I give you my personal cell phone so you can text me whenever you need help. Now, if you're ready to take things to the next level, click the link down below in the description to apply. Now let's get back to the podcast. Let's go.
So I'm like, well, shit. Like, okay. So luckily, because I spent 7 or 8 years or whatever, 6 years at the RIA, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to sell this by owner and I'm going to sell it on a lease option. Like, I'm not doing this. This is dumb. So I went out and bought a bunch of bandit signs and I started making signs said, Deltona, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 3-2, owner will finance $5,000 down. Right. So I put out a bunch of those signs and pretty quickly found, within a month, I found this nurse that needed to buy a house that had bad credit. And, I didn't do a great job screening or anything like that. But essentially, I think the 6th of June, she was moving in. We were moving out with our U-Haul. And I had my cashier's check for $5,000. And that was pretty much at that point all the money that me and my wife had. Like, that was it. Wow. So it's me, my wife, 2 teenage boys and 3 fat dogs, and we load up our Jeep Grand Cherokee and a U-Haul, and we go to Chattanooga. And I had been going back and forth, and we had bought a duplex, and we had bought this other really old, like 1900s house. Well, we had contracted it. So I don't know if you go in a house and then you go back later, and it's not really what you remember. Yeah. So it's a long ride. It's 577 miles from Chattanooga to Orlando to Chattanooga. So we get up early. We drive all the way up here. I get for the closing at like 4:00, and then we drive over to the house. And I pull up to this house, and I'm like, this is a little shittier than I remember. A little shittier than I remember. So we're so exhausted. We open the back of the truck, pull out like 2 mattresses, like literally some dog food and a couple fans, because of course it's a 1900s house with no central AC, and just drag it in there and throw them on the floor. Like, we just have to get some sleep because we're exhausted. And before I went to bed, like, now I realize like the floors in this house are kind of wonky. There's no air. Electric's only working in half the house because one of the poles is blown. And man, I'm laying on this mattress with with my wife. The kids are in the same room with on their mattress, and the dogs. And like, it was the worst night ever. Like, I literally cried myself to sleep because I'm like, what have I done? Like, what? Like, you're supposed to be a dad and a husband and a provider. And I at least went from this really nice house in Deltona to this piece of crap. Like, why did I do this to my family? Like, this is the dumbest thing ever. Like, I could have got a job. Like, I could have just said, screw real estate. And I could have just found a job someplace and kept my kids there where their friends were. And it was like, that was probably like one of the worst nights of my life, just laying there thinking, this is a freaking tragic error, But we woke up the next day and fucking got to work, right? Like, we realized, okay, there's 3 ways to make money in real estate, right? Quick, fast, medium, and slow, long term. Fastest is wholesaling, right? So believe it or not, after doing 15, even though I've done 1,500 deals in the last, 14 years, like, I tried wholesaling once in Orlando and couldn't make it work. Really, I couldn't make it work because I was making a bunch of money. I didn't really need it to work, but I needed it to work up there. Like, we had $5,000. That was it. Again, 2 boys and 3 fat dogs and a wife. So we got to work the next day, and we found our first wholesale deal within like 20 days, closed on it, made $6,000. And then just after that, just started, more and more deals. And, it's that literal burning the boats, right? We had no option. Like, this was it. We made that decision. I made that decision for the family. Luckily, my wife was always such a good sport and on board for whatever we wanted to do. But we found a way to make wholesaling work out of sheer necessity. And it was wholesaling old school, bandit signs, running up, putting little Post-its on the door, handwritten yellow letters, driving for dollars. That was what we did for the first probably 3 years of being here. We wholesaled just a lot of houses. So yeah, so that's how we ended up in Chattanooga and wholesaling.
Crazy, man.
And
So
yes.
that that time in your life, what is it that helped you get through that?
Well, so I think a lot of it comes back to my parents, right? Being very, um, um, you don't start something and not finish it. I was a Boy Scout and Eagle Scout, so that taught me some leadership and kind of stick with it skills. I have plenty of Catholic guilt to go on top of all of it, just as a little cherry on top, right? Like you can't let your family down. Yeah, I mean, I had responsibilities. I had a wife, two boys, and three fat dogs that depended on me to make sure that we figured this out. So it was necessity, just literal sheer necessity. There was no option. Like I knew it worked. I'd been around plenty of people in Orlando who were big wholesalers, right? So I knew wholesaling would work. And honestly, we weren't rehabbing then because nobody rehabbed for a couple of years because nobody could buy anything, right? Banks weren't lending money. So rehabbing was really off the table. When we first thought about coming to Chattanooga, it was to buy apartments, but again, banks were busy taking back properties, not lending on new ones. So no, I mean, I don't know of anything else other than just sheer desperation and wanting to make sure that I provided for my kids. I can tell you the first summer that we were here, weirdly enough, it was one of the best summers ever we had with our kids, but like we couldn't go on vacation. Like we'd go on hikes, up to the mountain, up to Raccoon Mountain, or we go over to Ocoee where the whitewater rafting was for the Olympics in Atlanta, or we'd do a barbecue in the backyard, hot dogs on a stick. But like that's what life was back then. I mean, I remember going to the store and going, okay, I gotta get the generic chips and the generic icy so we can make Kool-Aid, and do I have enough money to get hot dogs and hot dog buns? Like like I remember that very distinctly, that having to be on that kind of a budget, right? Like no TV, we had internet at the house, so we could do some work. But yeah, man, I mean, just had to provide for my family.
So there's a couple key things that I want to dive in a little bit more. So you mentioned basically getting started with 5 grand, having nothing else to your name,
Yeah,
and you also slid in there that you had done a lease option. Let's talk
yeah,
about what it's
sure.
like to get started with nothing and what some of the best ways to
Yeah,
find that success and be able to roll it on and build
yeah,
that momentum. And then let's talk about what creative financing, specifically,
sure.
owner financing and lease options
Yeah.
have done for you.
Love it, love it. I actually really don't like lease options as a mechanism for wholesalers, but yeah, I needed to find a way to at least get enough money to get out of Florida. I mean, I was hoping to get more down. The signs might have said 10,000 down. I don't remember, but it was 5,000 that we got. So yeah, I tell people when I'm telling the story, I'm like, you know what the line for broke is? It's here. We were half of broke. like we had no money. Like it wasn't 5 grand for my business. It was 5 grand to live and to pay that sub 2 mortgage on that piece of junk that we bought and we're living in, and to buy some food and put gas in the car. I mean, that was 5 grand does not last long, right? I could spend 5 grand in 15 minutes now. So like it was not a lot. So we knew that we had to go out and do it. Starting with nothing, honestly, I think most people are probably better off starting that way, because you have to really bootstrap it and figure it out. So within that 5 grand, we also had to go buy some bandit signs. We went out. Excuse me. For us, we made a plan. We said, okay, during the week, I'm going to get a drink. Sorry,
Very good.
got a little cold. But during the week, I would handwrite these bandit signs, we buy houses. And on Friday night, we would go out every Friday night and put them out. And I don't know if you've ever put out, or anybody's ever put out 100 bandit signs, but it takes a while. It takes three
Takes
to
a long
four hours.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, especially, we were nailing them up to posts, we were putting them in the ground. So we went out every single Friday and, we put out 100 bandit signs. Now, didn't matter if it was raining, snowing, like what the weather was, like we went out and did it. If, I had to take my kids, they wanted to go see a movie, we would go see the movie and we'd go do it at 1 a.m, or we'd do it at 10. Like it didn't matter. Like before the sun came up on Saturday, we made sure that we put those signs out. And we did that for 3 years, like without missing a beat. And even after we stopped for years, we'd drive by and we'd see our signs still tacked up in real obscure places. During the week, what we'd do is I would get up. I had this old beat up Jeep, and we would drive up and down, every single street driving for dollars. So I would do that. I would bring it back. My wife would sit at home. She would get on Property Appraiser and pull up the mailing address, create a spreadsheet, print off labels, and we were mailing out. We actually made like handwritten postcards that we made ourselves on cardstock, and she would cut it with a paper cutter.
Oh,
She was doing yellow letters. We finally got, after we did a couple of deals, we bought some pre-printed postcards, and she could print labels. But no, man, it was a team effort. My kids would be with me. They loved during the summer when they were out of school, jumping out of the back of the Jeep, running up and putting little sticky notes on the doors of vacant houses. We just had to figure out a way, right? If someone said, "Hey, putting those little sheets that say we buy houses with the tear off tabs at laundromats, that works." Man, I was going out. We did it. And what was different back then, there was also no RIA here in Chattanooga. So we actually started one so that we could have a group of people to meet with. But there was no education. There was no podcast. There was no, all the stuff that is available today. None of that was around back then. There was Ty the Flipman Taylor out of Birmingham. He had a YouTube video series, which was really good in the early days. And then there were a couple of educators real early. Tim Mai was around back then, Preston Ely, Dan Merrill, he's there with you. He was around, but like those were the original guys, right? Kenny Rushing, Tim Collins, like those were the original guys in the 2000s that really are the people who taught the people who taught the people who taught the people who taught the people at family, right? Like we're really probably fourth or fifth generation. We're not that first generation. But those guys, what they would do back then is they would have Wednesday night webinars. And it was usually some type of product launch. But the webinars were good, man, right? It'd be a 90-minute webinar. And,
man, they would suck you in too, man. You would just be there to the last second.
Yeah, man. Everything up. But they did give you some content, right? And I was just, we were there just trying to suck every free thing out of it that we possibly could. It's some stuff we bought, some stuff we didn't. But yeah, I mean, that's what it was like in the beginning, just figuring it out on your own. And wholesaling is not that complicated, right? It's not that tremendously complicated, but bootstrapping it. I don't have a better answer for it other than that.
No, that's important. I think you said all the things that someone needs to hear. You guys did those little things that you needed to do with the bandit signs, with creating the postcards and putting in the effort to do it. And if you're at that point where you need a bootstrap, you need a bootstrap. And then you also talked about as you advance, you got a coach, and that helped you break through to the next level and really advance that. So let's talk about the creative side. So you said you don't really love the lease option side, but you love owner financing to build your portfolio.
Here's what I mean by that. I think as investors, we don't buy the way that we sell, and we don't sell the way that we buy. So what I don't love is I don't love for wholesalers lease option as a strategy. Like I'm going to lease option it, and then I'm going to wrap the lease option to somebody else. I just think that's, for a lot of reasons, I think it's just kind of risky. But I love owner financing. Our portfolio is built 99%. I mean, they were all owner finance deals. A couple of them we've refinanced into bank loans now.
That's crazy.
Yeah. We have an $8 million portfolio with about $6,000 in upfront money.
That's so crazy. So walk me through that, because
that's a good whole podcast. But yeah,
it's a whole podcast. We don't have to get through all the secrets, but I'm just so curious by that, because I love when someone is obviously focused on a specific strategy, gets really good at it, laser focused. But to say that all of them are that way sounds crazy. Like who's to say that Oh, well, this one we bought with a private lender. We did the burst strategy. Nope, we did all of them owner financing.
There's
To
either
me, that's
owner
pretty wild.
straight owner financing or sub two.
All right, let's take a quick break from the podcast. If you're a real estate investor that's just getting started or struggling to find that next deal, I have just the thing that's going to help you get the breakthrough and the results you've been looking for. I have a free training that I want to share with you that shows you how to find deals, negotiate deals, and get paid. All you have to do is go over to deanrogers.com/training to gain access to this free training. Now let's get back to the podcast. Let's go.
So here's what happens. I'll tell you real quick. Excuse me. So, okay. So you got to, like, it's a different time. It's a way back, land far, far away. In 2010, 11, 12, banks are not lending. It's not happening. Like you had to have an 800 credit score to be buying a house back then. So you can't rehab, you can't refinance out. Like all that didn't exist back then. So, we were in a very down market. Even here, we were in a down market. So think about this: somebody, Dean, somebody owes 100,000 on their house, but you need to wholesale it at 80. So you got to contract it at 60 or 70, right? So you go to those houses, and I get it. Like we could have subtued far more than we did, but it's just for what it is. I was relatively new as a wholesaler. So what happened was we kept making offers. Oh, I can't take that, right? And not everybody will do sub two, right? So we kept hitting this wall, right, where people had their financing. It just wouldn't allow them to, to bring that kind of cash to closing. Also, in hindsight, I can see that we should have bought every one of them on sub two and just ridden the market 4x up, but again, it was a terrible time. Nobody knew that this was going to happen. Nobody knew, you just don't know what the future is. Now we all understand that because I've been doing it, you've been doing it, real estate will continue to go up. But back then I didn't. So okay. So I'm like, well, this sucks. I'm going through a lot of leads. But then I remembered because I went to a lot of RIA meetings and I was sitting in a boot camp or whatever one time. And you may know this. I'll ask you, do you know the percentage of houses in the United States that are owned free and clear?
It's actually a surprisingly high amount, like freakishly high. I don't remember the exact percent, but I'm just going to say it's like 50 or 60%, something pretty high.
It's not quite that. It's between 40 and 42.
Okay, 40. 40 was the other number. The third number I was going to guess.
Astronomically high number, right?
Oh, high. Yeah. Now, is that
no mortgage?
So it's no mortgage, but is that like down to a certain specific area or region that's most common?
Just nationwide. Okay. Those are like First Americans numbers. Okay. So I'm sure some areas are going to be, of course, different, but nationwide 40%. So I'm like, okay. I'm like, all right, Davey. Well, I can't keep making offers to people who can't take it. So why don't I just market to people who are free and clear? Then I can make them whatever offer I want. And if they don't accept it, that's cool, but at least I have a shot, right? Like at least there's a possibility that they could accept my $60,000 offer. So we shifted all of our, and this is probably in 2010, we shifted, and we were still driving for dollars, but we shifted all of our, list pulling to free and clear. And so what that does is now we're getting calls. I'm going out and making the wholesale offer. And sometimes they take it, sometimes they don't, right? Like if you're good, 1 out of 10 will take it, but that means 9 didn't, right? Okay. So if I offered you wanted 90,000, Dean, and I offered you 60, you're like, oh, I can't take it. Well, hopefully in this conversation, I've already established what your pain point is, right? Your pain point is, your cat's got psoriasis and you need to move to Phoenix so your cat can.
That's when you've dealt with a lot, right?
Yeah. Got to get away from that ocean air that you got down there. So I'd be like, and just no way 60 would work, huh? And this is a condensed version, but I'll be like, well, let me ask you this, man, because it's got to be like the first time you've ever thought about it.
Yeah. I love that. By the way, I got to pause there. That when I teach my students, when I teach my team, it is 100% has to be like that. You have to give it your effort, like you're going to get an Emmy award or whatever award, right? Because it needs to be like a genuine feeling, and you
Yeah.
need to have that pause. So I love that. I just had to talk about that.
So also, you're the perfect person for this analogy. This is what I tell people. This is not the fun and gun passing game. This is why do you go to the running game in football? To slow it down, right? You got to slow down the pace of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
In our brain, this is all firing off like rocket ships, right? But when you're talking to somebody, most people only sell a couple of houses in their life, and it's
Yeah.
with a realtor. So when you're going to start talking about other crazy shit, you cannot overwhelm them and show them how smart you are.
It's
You're
got to
going to
be simple, right?
keep it simple, right? So, when I'm doing these things, one, I'm doing that to calm me down too, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, man, I really prefer to buy these things with cash, but let me ask you a question. Do you need all the money at once? That's my question. That's it. Yes or no. There'll be yes or no. And you shouldn't, like, because you're marketing to free and clear people. Like, I don't know why anybody would market anybody other than free and clear. But you're marketing to free and clear people. You're asking quite like this is obviously the end of a 30-minute conversation, right? I've peppered, I've put some fucking markers in there all the way along. Like, what are you gonna do when you go to Phoenix? What are you gonna do? Did you like being a landlord? What's your favorite part about being a landlord? What do you hate about being? I'm asking a lot of questions to get to this point. But you're like, well, and you might say, no, I don't need all the money at once. Well, now I have a second bite at the apple. Okay, well, man, I'd really rather buy this cash, but if there was a way I could get to your 90 and we could do maybe something over, payments over time or something like that, would you be open to that? Right. I'm only taking them like 1 inch at a time. I'm not like, hey, Dean, so would you like to owner finance and hold a note and we'll do a deed of trust? And like, no, it's not any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, and if I could find a way to do this, would you be open to that? Well, yeah. Okay. Because I know you said the best part of landlording was getting the check. The worst part is dealing with the tenants. This would be like the best of both worlds, right? You'd be getting a check every month and not having to deal with the tenants' toilets and taxes. Yeah, great. Cool. Right. I'm trying to get to there. However you get there is up to you, right? Your personality, but I'm trying to get to there. And then I say, well, Dean, let me do this. Let me go back to my office. Let me break out my calculator. Let me see. There might be two or three different ways that we could structure this. You can do it on the fly if you're good. Like I can do it on the fly now, but most people can't. And then I'm just going to make them 3 offers. And this 3 offers comes from an old pre-foreclosure type offer thing, that course that I bought called Autopilot from Chris Kirshner, who's out of the business, but probably one of the best courses I ever bought. And essentially, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make 3 offers. One, I'm going to make you an offer at 90,000. And I'm literally making up terms, right? 90,000, 4% interest on a 20-year term. First payment due on the 15th of the month, 90 days from now, right? Whatever. And the way that this takes a little more work, you need to figure out like what it would cash flow at. Because for me, I only keep properties and cash flow. I would not wrap these and resell them. My third offer is going to be my cash offer. And then that middle offer is going to be, maybe I'll offer you $2,000 or $5,000, something like that. I'll, maybe a purchase price of 75,000, and 3% interest, something like that, right? It takes a minute to work out the numbers, but yeah, so I'm going to make you 3 offers. I'm going to say, hey, Dean, let's take a look at this. I was able to come up with a way to get you the full 90. Here you go. So you'll read it. Oh, okay, 90. Okay, so you're going to make me payments. Yep. Okay, great. Or I've got this middle one here where I can get you 5,000 up front now, pay you a little bit less, but you still, and at the end, I always put in bold letters, like, I amortize it out and figure out what the total payout is. Total payout, 137,000. So really, not only am I giving you 90, I can actually get you 137 over time. And then, middle one, and then the bottom one is the cash offer. And I know I'm rushing this a ton, and then, Dean, which one do you think would work for you? and shut up. And which one would you pick, man? Just pick one. Which one?
I like the middle one. I love it.
You know what, man? That's the one everybody picks. Because now I'm gonna emotionally anchor you to have made the right decision, so you don't walk out of here and go, man, did I screw that up? I'm like, you know what? That's what everybody picks. That's it.
What if they switch? Oh no, I meant this one. No, I'm just fine.
Well, I mean, popular too, man. Whatever, works for you. My goal is just here to try to help you solve this problem.
Yeah. No,
So
it's
that's what it is, right? Like we're trying to solve their problem. This works amazing with landlords. Absolutely amazing. Because literally the conversation is, I would have talked to you like, man, because I want to, when I go meet people, I want to learn about them. Right. I'm always fascinated with like the 80-year-old landlord who owns 50 houses. It's like, man, How did you get started? What got you going? What even made you think about real estate? How did you buy all these deals? Like, I want to learn about people. I'm always interested. So, the more you can really care and learn about somebody and figure out what their pain point is, well, that's what you're going to use when you get to the end, and even if you push back a little bit, like, man, Dean, I know, but I could get this done really quick because I know, you said your cat's getting really sick with the psoriasis and you got to get her to dry weather. Like literally we could have this done in 3 days.
See, I think the thing that is so valuable with what you just went over is that you got to make it simple. Got to make it simple because for us to understand all the ins and outs, we might need to get to the nitty gritty, but the average person is just going to be overwhelmed, and just when they're overwhelmed, they're going to shut down and shut off. So
a confused mind says no. You know? So it's not a lot more complicated. And really, the paperwork's very simple to do. It's not, the thing I get asked to go out and speak a lot about is we have this as a course, 3 Offers to Freedom. And, I could do we actually did a weekend boot camp of 2 days explaining this out really in detail. But it's a very simple, such a simple way to do it. And for me, I'm different than you. When I started, I was 40. But when I started wholesaling and doing this part of the business. So I did not want to be doing stuff on a 30-year mortgage. Didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be done when I was 70, right? So, I was always trying to have the shortest mortgages possible. I didn't really care too much about cash flow. In my predicament, I had a thriving wholesale business. We were making, on a bad month, $20,000 a month. So I didn't need $400 in cash flow. That wasn't really a driver for me. For me, it was collecting as many properties as I could and getting them paid off as quickly as possible so that I could be living in Southern California or on a beach someplace, right? So for me, all of my properties actually pay off in the next 4 and 5 years. So that was more of my goal than anything else. I wanted to hold these things for forever and, we'll probably have $60,000 a month cash flow coming in when it's done. And I can pass that on to my kids and grandkids, right? It's generational wealth or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. That's when it gets
nice. A lot of millions of dollars in the bank to kick off $40,000 to $50,000 a month.
It's true. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's kind of my philosophy on owner financing. I would sell on a lease option, but I wouldn't want to buy on a lease option. I would sell on a contract for deed, but I would never buy on a contract for deed because I want to be able to keep control of the deal, right? I want to always have the deed in my possession, right? So the reason we would buy this way, we would never, I think the reason people do lease options and contract for deed is they're just afraid. They're afraid to make the offer, right? Unless you get somebody really sophisticated, which happens, right? Like I would never sell to somebody the way I buy, but, because I want to maintain the control of the deal. I want to buy with cash, or I want to buy with financing, or I want to buy sub 2, but I want the deed to be in my name so that I'm in control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about, so you went from Florida to Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Does that mean that you kind of transitioned and shifted all your focus on investing in Tennessee?
Yeah. Well, because remember, we were just flipping in Orlando. So we really had no assets other than that one house that I left behind. We had no assets. So once we got here, all of our rental properties are really within about 15 minutes of where our office is. Yeah, I don't invest in other states, which is fine. But again, back then, like virtual wholesaling wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
Virtual wholesaling didn't come out until 15 or 16.
No,
Um,
I'm big on local anyways. That's how I run my whole business.
yeah,
Is the local model and to stay in your own backyard. Have
yeah.
you expanded into other parts of Tennessee or other states, or have you just kept it in Chattanooga?
Yeah, and we're right on the Georgia line, so I have a couple properties in Georgia. Like
Okay.
your arm could probably throw a baseball into Georgia from here. So I'm relatively like a quarter mile. So Chattanooga sits right on the line. We're exactly 2 hours north of Atlanta. We're the first city as you go over the line.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And Tennessee's a pretty good market, right? Like it's landlord friendly.
yeah. A
There's a
lot of
lot of
people.
growth there.
No state income tax. So we're one of those states. So
Yep.
yeah, it's a beautiful place to live. It really is. When we came here, I thought I would be here for like 5 to 7 years, one market cycle, and it's great, man. The people are awesome. It's a beautiful place to live. Like like you, I've been all over the world, but there are still days I'm driving through Tennessee. I'm like, with the mountains and the change of seasons, I'm like, I get why people travel here. It's a beautiful place. It really is. So yeah, I enjoy it. It's definitely become home.
That's awesome. I've looked at Tennessee as a potential market myself, even though again, everything I own and do is in Central California and where I stay focused. But um, let's end with talking about something that you've become known about, which is your business with outsourcing the transaction coordination aspect of the business. Walk me through that real quick.
Yeah, so we're a virtual transaction coordination company. So we're sort of like we could be like your VATC. For us, the way that it happened was we were wholesaling nationwide. Actually, this room that I'm standing in had our own personal TCs in it, and so the COVID happened. Whenever it was 4 years ago, or whatever that little recession was or blip, and a lot of people started letting go of people on their staff. So I'm an investor lift cartel boss, and some of the other cartel bosses were like, "Hey man, I let go of my TC and my assistant. Can you you still have yours? Can you help us do some deals?" Because that was kind of the thing that I was always known for. The thing I coached on was dispositions. And again, 20 years of doing deals, all kinds of wacky deals, you get good at title work. So I was always kind of the back half of the deal specialist. So I'm like, yeah, sure, man. We'll just charge you per deal or something. We'll figure it out. I want to help my friends. And so we did that for like a month or two, and I'm like, you know what? I feel like this is a business. I feel like this is something that we could do, that there's a gap in the marketplace where, it makes absolutely no sense for every investor in the country to go out and hire a, 30, 40, 50, $60,000 transaction coordinator. That's dumb. When we can do it at scale from here. And COVID definitely taught us that, closings went very remote. Everybody was, sending out notaries. Like it got very virtual very quickly. That COVID was good for that part of our business for sure. So we launched at Ricardo's event in 2021. Yeah, October of 2021. And we really got going in 22. We had 65 clients our first year. I just did my numbers yesterday for a meeting. So I know we did $55 million in transactions the first year. And then this year, we're going to end up at about $110 million in transactions, $17 million in assignment fees for our clients. So yeah, we work virtual. All of our transaction coordinators are here in our office in Chattanooga. Nobody in the Philippines, not that they're not awesome. We have plenty of marketing VAs and stuff, but all of our people that actually talk to buyers and sellers are here in the office. So yeah, we work with wholesalers and investors all over the country getting their deals closed. So we actually 4X'd our company this year, and we expect to 4X again next year.
Those are some big numbers, man. That's pretty wild.
It's been a wild ride. Like I knew there was a need
A
for
lot of deals.
Yeah, we took in was like 2,088 files last year. This year, the year we're in right now, that's a lot of That's a lot of files. So we're
Yeah.
really good at, all our team does all day long. We don't wholesale anymore. We don't, I don't do any coaching. All of my properties are outsourced to property management. There's 17 people in our office. All they do all day long is work on title issues and close people's deals. So, when I'm speaking to people, I'll say, listen, close your eyes, think of the worst deal you've ever had. That's a Tuesday for us, right? Like, it's literally like the guy in the Matrix, right? We can see the problem coming because we just see him over and over and over again, right? You're like,
Yeah.
oh, dead person. Like, why didn't they, we were talking earlier about your closing. Like, immediately I'm like, oh, well, they should have done this, this, and this. Somebody should have caught that for you, right? Well, someone should have pulled the search early and seen, this was a thing. So yeah, so that's what we do. We just do it. We do transaction coordinating on a bigger scale than anybody's ever thought of doing.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
huge. Well, we'll put some notes down in the show notes here if someone wants to check out your guys' company. It's REI Closings, right?
Yeah, easy. The
Easy,
letter E, the letter
easy.
Z. Yeah, easy REI and then closings with an S.com.
Yeah, easy REI
Yeah.
Closings. So you guys can check that out. Dude, it's been fun to go through and chat about your story.
Yeah,
And
man.
I know that you're highly respected in the industry and just a
Right.
big giver and help a lot of people in their businesses. So
Shit, that's
appreciate
nice
you
of
being
you.
here, man.
Yeah, dude, I'm so glad we got to finally get this set up, and hopefully we'll do it again, and I'll have you on mine here pretty soon.
Sounds like a plan, man. All right, guys, until next time, peace.
See ya.